Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. If you ask NFL fans who the best defensive back in the NFL was during the 1960s, you would get quite a few answers. Some would argue that it's Cardinals safety Larry Wilson, the 8-time Pro Bowler and 5-time first-team All-Pro who led the league in interceptions during the 1966 season. And you would get a few people arguing that it's Cowboys defensive back Mel Renfro, who was drafted in 1964 and made 7 straight Pro Bowls to start his career off while leading the league in interceptions in 1969. But probably the most common answer that you get would be Packers cornerback Herb Adderley. The Packers have been around for over a century, and yet Adderley might have a claim to being the greatest Packer defender of all time. He is a team legend, and for all he did in the NFL, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1980, forever enshrined in canon. But while fans remember him fondly now, back in 1969, he left in just about the ugliest way possible. What you might not know is that after the 1969 season, tensions between Adderley and the team got so tense that Adderley forced their hand, and vowed never to play for the Packers again. And this is the story behind the infamous drama. Before I talk about the incident in question, we need some context to suggest who Herb Adderley is, because it will help us to understand why this was such a big deal in the first place. In the first round of the 1961 NFL Draft, the Packers drafted the Michigan State running back. Yes, I said running back. He was one of the top backs in the Big Ten Conference, finishing 4th in rushing yards in 1959, and he was drafted initially to play offense. The only problem? The Packers had some guys on the depth chart that were above him that you may have heard of, named Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor. It was clear that Adderley wasn't going to be getting any playing time whatsoever. With this logjam, Vince Lombardi decided that he still wanted to utilize his talents, and because of this, Adderley switched over to defense in the middle of that 1961 season. What followed was an unbelievable stretch where he not only became the heart and soul of that Green Bay secondary, but became arguably the best cornerback in football. He was named the first-team All-Pro in 1962, 1963, 1965, and 1966. He made 5 consecutive Pro Bowls from 1963 to 67. He led the league in 1965 with 3 pick sixes. He was named a member of the All-1960s team. And since he became a starter in 1962, the Packers won 5 NFL championships and 2 Super Bowls. He even holds the distinction of being the first player in the history of a Super Bowl to return an interception for a touchdown. However, nothing good lasts forever. When Vince Lombardi retired at the end of the 1967 season, he was replaced by Phil Bengtson. This was a logical hire. Bengtson was the defensive coordinator of the Packers from 1959 to 67, and was basically being groomed as Lombardi's successor. But the 1968 season did not go too well, both for Adderley and the team. From a team perspective, the Packers went 6-7-1. It was their first time not playing postseason football since 1959, if you want to count the playoff bowl as a playoff game. And it was their first time with a losing record since 1958, which was before Lombardi even got there. And for Adderley, it was a bit of a down year for him as well. His 3 interceptions were the fewest of his career since becoming a full-time starter. It was the first time since 1964 that he couldn't find the end zone. And it was the first time since 1961, when he wasn't a starter, that he didn't receive either a first-team All-Pro or a Pro Bowl nomination. Still, there didn't seem to be any cracks in the relationship between Adderley and the Packers. That would all change in 1969. The Packers were able to bounce back during that 1969 season. While they did not make the postseason, nor did they ever really have a shot with just how dominant the Minnesota Vikings were in that division, they went 8-6. A big reason why they finished with a winning record was because of their defensive play. The Packers allowed 221 points, which was the 3rd best total in the league, and comes out to an average somewhere in the ballpark of 15 points per game. Why was their defense so good in 1969? Well, Herb Adderley was a big reason why. You could make the argument, and I know Herb definitely did, that the 1969 campaign was the best year of his career up until that point, and he's had a lot of good ones. His 5 interceptions ranked tied for 7th in the entire league. He had 169 yards on those interceptions, which was the best total in all of football. Now, I'm not sure anyone was arguing that Adderley was better than Mel Renfro in 1969, but with the exception of him, you might have an argument that Adderley was the best defensive back in the NFL that season. And for his efforts, Adderley was awarded with nothing. No accolades. To his shock, he did not make the Pro Bowl, and he felt slighted by this by his head coach, Phil Bengtson. The opinions of the coaches in terms of who deserved to go to the Pro Bowl back then meant a lot, and in Adderley's mind, Bengtson didn't advocate hard enough for him. While coaches obviously couldn't vote for their own players, they could make recommendations, and Adderley believed that his omission, after the incredible year he had, meant that Bengtson didn't push hard enough for him. And to make matters worse, before their Week 14 finale against the St. Louis Cardinals, Bengtson went up to Bob Jeter and told him that he made the Pro Bowl. Jeter had fewer interceptions and no touchdowns, and yet he was making the Pro Bowl over Adderley? And the fact that Bengtson told Jeter this while Adderley was standing there? To say that Adderley was insulted by this would be an understatement. When Bengtson came up to Adderley after the game and told him that he had a great year, Adderley said that it wasn't good enough if he didn't make the Pro Bowl, saying that it was a bitter blow to his pride. Bengtson responded in a press conference by saying that he had nothing against Adderley, and he knew that he was disappointed, but that he would come back because he's a professional and would try even harder in 1970. But by this point, the damage was done. Adderley thought that Bengtson had slighted him, especially since his inferior teammate got in over him. And with that, Adderley made his message clear. I'm never playing for the Green Bay Packers again. December 21st was the last game the Packers played that season. Not even 2 days later, on December 23rd, Adderley announced that he was done with Green Bay, saying, I don't want to come back and perform 100% and then get a slap in the face at the end of the year. He then added that he lost his desire to play for the Packers. Alright, it's not even 48 hours after the season ended, and he's understandably frustrated about the situation. Maybe with some cooling off, he'll change his mind. He had a great relationship with Bengtson for a decade, and a Pro Bowl appearance is the thing that's going to end it all? This is clearly just Adderley blowing off some steam. He'll be fine. Except to everyone's surprise, it wasn't. He was dead serious about never playing for the Packers again. About 6 weeks later, Adderley spoke again, and said that his mind was made up. He still was not going to be coming back to Green Bay. By this point, the Packers were open to trading him. Now, if they realized this was more than him just blowing off steam after a disappointing decision. When May rolled around, Adderley was still not changing his mind. He called it a mental impossibility to ever play for the Packers again, and said that he would rather retire and never play football again than play another snap in Green Bay. There seemed to be a breakthrough around the same time, where Bengtson and Adderley hashed out their differences, and where it seemed like Adderley might change his mind. That did not happen. When those reports came out, Adderley emphatically denied them, saying there was no truth to these reports. Adderley was as good as gone. And in August, just a month before the start of the 1970 season, Adderley dealt the final blow to the Packers organization by announcing his retirement from pro football. He wanted to make it very clear that this was not meant to disrespect Bob Jeter or any of his other Packer teammates who made the Pro Bowl, and that those players were never the targets of his comments. He clarified that they deserved to make the Pro Bowl, but that he was hurt that he wasn't there with them, and was hurt that his coach didn't advocate strongly enough for him. Defensive back Willie Wood seemed surprised at this announcement, saying he had no indication that he was thinking about retirement. Although I have to wonder where Wood was all this time, since Adderley said multiple times that he'd rather retire than play another snap with the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay had prepared for this somewhat, as despite a strong secondary and defense, they spent a second-round pick in 1970 on Texas A&I defensive back Al Matthews. But anyone who possibly thought that Adderley was bluffing about his disgruntled nature was sorely mistaken. That 1969 game against the Cardinals would be the last game that Adderley ever played for the Packers. However, it would not be the last time that he played in the NFL. 1 month after announcing his retirement, Adderley announced his comeback. Around the turn of the decade, it seemed like if you were a star player, the cool thing to do was announce your retirement and then unretire without missing any time. Not really retirement. Ask Joe Namath about that, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Ask Earl Morrall about that, and now you can ask Herb Adderley about that, because in September, he unretired after getting traded to the Dallas Cowboys. When the Packers traded Adderley away to their rivals in exchange for Malcolm Walker and Clarence Williams, it marked a new chapter in Adderley's career and the end of an era. Adderley played 3 seasons in Dallas, and he played pretty well for most of that time, though he never made a Pro Bowl. He made it to the Super Bowl twice, and won the 3rd and final Super Bowl ring of his career at Super Bowl VI against the Miami Dolphins. In 1971, despite being 32 years old, he finished inside the top 10 in the league in interceptions, recording 6. He actually led all players over the age of 30 in this category, showing that even though he was getting up there in age, he still had something left in the tank. And before the start of the 1973 season, Adderley retired, with this one being for real. The way his saga ended in Dallas might have been even messier than how it ended in Green Bay, but that's a story for a future video. Since this whole fiasco went down, tensions between Adderley and the Packers have settled down. Adderley said that he doesn't wear his Cowboys Super Bowl ring, and that he always considered himself to be a Packer. In one interview from 2014, Adderley had nothing but great things to say about Bengtson, calling him a great defensive coordinator, and praising his flexibility with allowing players to make adjustments on the field and switch out of play calls. And this would be the last time ever that a star player and future Hall of Famer would be disgruntled with the Packers management. Never happened again. Today, Adderley is remembered as a Green Bay legend, and one of the greatest players in the history of the franchise. But when the 1970s were starting, to say that there was bad blood between the two sides would be a massive understatement, because the way Adderley's time came to an end in Green Bay was about as ugly as humanly possible, and it was all because he didn't make the Pro Bowl. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Monday and Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9, and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping with the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.